The door opened with a slow, deliberate creak, as if it hadn't been touched in a long while. The hallway lights spilled inside, revealing a room that didn't match the rest of Ethan's apartment at all. It was darker, lit only by a single standing lamp in the corner, casting a warm pool of light across the space. The air was cooler here, and the faint scent of cedarwood I'd noticed earlier was sharper, more concentrated. My eyes took a moment to adjust, but when they did, I froze. The walls were covered in photographs, not framed neatly like the ones in the cabinet. These were tacked directly to the walls, overlapping, uneven, covering almost every inch. Hundreds of them, maybe more. And in nearly every single one, I was there. Some were recent me at last month's dinner party, laughing at something. Out of frame. Me walking to my car after work, head tilted down, hair catching the evening light. Me at a coffee shop, staring out the window, a half-drunk latte in front of me. Others were older. Me at the park with friends. Me browsing a bookstore. Me standing in my kitchen, pouring wine into a glass. They weren't posed. They weren't taken with my knowledge. These were stolen moments, captured without my permission, without my awareness. My chest tightened. And for a second, I couldn't breathe. What is this? Ethan stepped inside the room, his expression unreadable. It's you. I shook my head, taking a step back instinctively. No. I mean, how do you even have these? When did you... I've been watching you for... a long time, he said quietly, almost as if the confession was meant to soothe me, not in a bad way. My laugh came out sharp, disbelieving. Not in a bad way. You have a shrine, Ethan. He closed the door behind us, not trapping me exactly, but blocking the exit all the same. I take pictures of what matters to me. You matter. The air felt suddenly thinner, my heart pounding hard against my ribs. You barely know me. His gaze didn't waver. I know enough. I know the way you hold your coffee cup with both hands when it's cold. I know you hum along to songs when you think no one's listening. I know you touch your hair when you're nervous. I know you're lonelier than you let people see. The way he said it calm, certain sent a shiver through me. Part of me wanted to run. Another part couldn't ignore the strange pull in his voice, the way it felt like he was stripping me bare without ever laying a hand on me. Why now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. Because I was waiting for you to see me. And you haven't. Not really. So I had to show you. I shook my head, my mind racing. Ethan, this is too much. His hand lifted, hovering near my face, but not touching. You didn't walk away tonight. You could have. You came here because you feel it too. The worst part was, some part of me had felt something. Ever since those first brief conversations at parties, that quiet charge in the air between us. And now, standing here, surrounded by proof that he had been watching me for months maybe. Years, it was impossible to untangle fear from fascination. I should go, I said finally, though the words felt weak. His jaw tightened slightly, but he stepped aside, opening the door for me. If that's what you want. I moved past him, my pulse hammering, the room behind me still burning in my mind. I didn't look back until I reached the living room. He stayed in the doorway, watching me. You think this is the end, he said softly, but it isn't. I swallowed hard. It should be. He tilted his head, almost smiling, though there was no humor in it. You'll see. I didn't wait for more. I grabbed my bag and left, the night air hitting me like a slap. My hands trembled as I unlocked my car, my mind replaying everything, the photographs. His words, the way he had spoken about me like I was both a subject and an obsession. I drove home in silence. No music, no distractions. But even then, I Couldn't shake the image of those walls, and the unnerving truth that part of me wasn't only afraid. Part of me was curious. The days that followed were restless. I told myself I wouldn't answer if he contacted me, that I'd block his number if I had to. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped before I could stop it. By the third night, the message came. You left something behind. I stared at it, my fingers tight around my phone. I hadn't left anything. I was sure of it, and yet, against my better judgment, I typed back, "What?" No reply, just another message, a few seconds later. Come and see. I didn't know if I was going back for closure, for answers, or because that strange pull hadn't let go of me. But I went. When I stepped into his apartment again, the photographs were gone. The walls were bare, as if they'd never been covered. At all, Ethan was sitting on the couch, a small box on the table in front of him. He gestured for me to sit. Inside the box was a single photograph. Just one. It was me standing on my balcony, looking up at the night sky, completely unaware of the camera. And in the corner, faint but visible, was Ethan. "This is the first one I ever took of you," he said. "The night we met." I stared at it, my breath catching. "You can take it," he said, "or you can leave it." I looked up at him, trying to read his face, his intentions. And if I take it, his gaze didn't move. "Then you'll know this isn't over." I hesitated, the silence between us stretching, heavy with everything unsaid. Then, slowly, I reached for the photograph. His smile was small, almost satisfied. "I knew you would." And in that moment, I realized something that unsettled me more than anything else. He hadn't just been watching me. He'd been waiting for me to watch him back. This ending keeps the tension unresolved, leaving your audience hooked on the emotional and psychological pull between them while still delivering the unbelievable twist promised in the title. I followed Ethan down a short hallway, the sound of my footsteps muffled against the dark hardwood floors. The air inside his apartment carried a faint scent, something warm and expensive, like cedar wood layered with the faint sweetness of amber. It was the kind of smell that lingered without being overpowering, the kind that made you wonder if it was cologne or simply him. The living room opened up before me, bathed in the soft golden glow of lamplight. The record player in the corner spun slowly, the crackle of an old jazz tune filling the silence between us. My eyes swept over the space. Minimal but intentional, every object seemed placed for a reason. A stack of books on the coffee table, a single glass of whiskey half full, an open notebook with a pen resting neatly across it. "This is cozy," I said, my voice softer than I intended, almost as if I didn't want to disturb the stillness here. Ethan glanced over his shoulder at me, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth. "Cozy is one way to put it," led me toward the far end of the room, where a set of sliding doors opened into a small balcony. Beyond it, the city lights twinkled against the night sky. But instead of stepping outside, he stopped in front of a wooden cabinet. It was tall, with dark, polished doors, the kind that looked like they might hide fine crystal or rare bottles of wine. "Here," he said simply, resting one hand on the edge. I tilted my head, waiting for him to open it. But instead, he just looked at me for a moment, long enough for me to feel the weight of his gaze. "You're not going to tell me what's inside?" I asked, forcing a lightness into my tone. "You'll see." With that, he pulled the doors open. Inside wasn't glassware or liquor. It was photographs. Dozens of them. Some framed, others stacked loosely in piles. Black and white prints, faded Polaroids. Glossy 4x6 shots, all neatly arranged in a way that felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. I stepped closer, drawn in. The images were beautiful, but strange. Most of them were portraits of people I didn't recognize, candid shots, stolen moments. A woman laughing over coffee. A man smoking under a street lamp. A couple sitting on a park bench, leaning into each other as if sharing a secret. "Did you take these?" I asked, glancing back at him, double quotes, "Yes." The word was simple, but his tone carried something else, pride, maybe, or something darker. "They're incredible," I said honestly. The compositions were stunning, intimate in a way that made me feel almost intrusive. Like I was looking at moments I wasn't supposed to see. His eyes softened just slightly. "That's the point," I frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence without him touching me. People show more of themselves when they think no one's watching. My job is to watch. It should have sounded unsettling, but the way he said it, low, measured, made it feel like a confession. As I reached for another photograph, my fingers brushed his. The contact was brief, almost accidental, but it sent a quiet jolt through me. His gaze held mine for a moment longer than it should have before he finally stepped back, breaking whatever had been forming between us. "Come on," he said. "There's more." I followed him into the kitchen. The lights here were dimmer, casting long shadows across the sleek counters. He moved with a calm precision, pulling a bottle of wine from the rack, uncorking it without a word. I didn't. "No, you were into photography," I said, trying to fill the silence. "There's a lot you don't know about me." He replied, his eyes flicking up to meet mine briefly before returning to the bottle. It wasn't an accusation, but it wasn't casual either. It was an invitation to ask more. I leaned against the counter. "So, what's the rest of this something you wanted to show me?" He poured the wine into 2 glasses, then handed me one. "You'll find out, but not all at once." The way he said it made me think he wasn't talking about photographs anymore. We drank, and for a while, the conversation flowed more easily. We talked about music, how he collected old vinyl records. We talked about the city, how he preferred walking at night when the streets were quiet. Every so often, he'd say something that felt deliberately revealing, like a breadcrumb left for me to follow, though I wasn't sure where it would lead. But beneath it all, the tension remained. Not uncomfortable, exactly, but charged, like standing too close to a fire and not knowing whether to step back or lean in. At one point, he asked, "Why did you come tonight?" I hesitated. Curiosity, I guess. His smile was faint, but it carried a knowing edge. Curiosity can be dangerous. The words lingered in the air between us. I sipped my wine, feeling his gaze still on me even when I didn't look directly at him. We drifted back into the living room after that. The record had stopped, leaving the room in a hushed kind of silence. He walked over to the player, flipping through a small stack of vinyls before choosing another. This one was slower, softer, a song I didn't recognize, but one that seemed to curl around the edges of the room like smoke. "Dance with me," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "Dance with me," he repeated, already stepping closer. I could have laughed it off. I could have said I didn't dance. But something in his tone, firm, expectant, made it feel less like a question and more like a moment I was supposed to step into, so I did. He took my glass and set it aside. Then his hand found my waist, the other guiding my hand up to his shoulder. We moved slowly, the music dictating a rhythm that felt almost dreamlike. His touch was steady but unhurried, his eyes never quite leaving mine. It wasn't just a dance, it was a conversation without words, a silent negotiation of distance and closeness. "See," he murmured, "not so bad." I smiled faintly, though. My chest felt tight. I didn't say it was. We moved like that for what felt like longer than the song lasted. And when it finally ended, we didn't step apart right away. "Ethan," I began, unsure what I was even about to say. But before I could finish, He leaned in just enough that I felt the ghost of his breath against my cheek, then stepped back abruptly. As if catching himself, "I should show you the rest," he said, his voice quieter now. I followed him once more, this time down a narrower hallway. At the end was a closed door. He paused, his hand on the knob, and glanced back at me. "What's behind here?" "Not many people see," he said. I swallowed. "Why me?" His eyes held mine. "Because I think you'll understand." He opened the door, and whatever I had been expecting, it wasn't this. It had been an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day you move through on autopilot. I woke up, made coffee, and stared at my phone as if it might give me a reason to smile before I even got dressed. Work had been the same emails, polite small talk, half-hearted meetings. By the time the sun began sinking into that golden-orange horizon, I was ready to pour myself a glass of wine, put on a mindless show, and let the hours slide into the next day. But life doesn't always warn you when it's about to shift. Sometimes it comes in quietly, like a knock you almost don't hear, or a message you almost don't open. It was just past 7 when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another notification from some group chat I never bothered to mute. But when I glanced down, my pulse ticked up a beat. The message wasn't from a close friend or a family member, it was from Ethan. Ethan wasn't a stranger. But he wasn't exactly someone I'd call a friend either. He was complicated. We'd crossed paths a few times at mutual gatherings, small dinner parties, birthdays, and one weekend trip I had tagged along for at the insistence of a friend. He was always there in the background, never the loudest in the room, but somehow the one you noticed without meaning to. There was something about him, something unspoken. Not charm in the traditional, practiced sense, but a kind of quiet confidence that made you wonder what he was thinking, what he wasn't saying. And in the few moments we had spoken directly, there had been an edge. Not flirtation exactly, but something lingering just beneath it, like heat behind closed doors. And now, there it was, a message from him. "Come by tonight, 9 p.m. I want to show you something." No hello, no explanation. Just those 2 sentences. I stared at the screen, trying to piece it together. The logical part of my brain immediately kicked in. I didn't know him well enough for late-night invitations. People didn't just send cryptic messages like this without a reason. It could be innocent, could be something completely harmless. But the absence of details, the deliberate not saying, was what made my stomach tighten. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "What do you want to show me?" I typed it out, then erased it. The words felt too blunt, too revealing of the fact that he had already hooked my curiosity. I typed again, "Is everything okay?" Deleted that too. That made it sound like I cared too much. Instead, I just left it unanswered and tossed my phone aside. I poured that glass of wine I'd been planning, turned on the TV, and told myself to forget about it. But the truth, every scene of the show blurred. Every sip of wine tasted like anticipation. My mind kept circling back to that message, wondering why he had sent it. Why to me, by 8:15, I was pacing. I wasn't dressed for anything, just loose. Joggers and a tank top. Hair tied up. I could ignore him. I could go to bed early. Chalk it up to him being strange and not my problem. But a quiet part of me, the same part that noticed his glances at those gatherings, was whispering something else. What if you miss something? The problem with curiosity is that it's rarely satisfied by logic. By 8:25, I was standing in front of my mirror, telling myself I wasn't dressing up. I was just changing into something more decent. My hands reached for my favorite jeans, a fitted black top that wasn't too much but wasn't casual either. I let my hair down, smoothed it out. I even put on a light layer of lipstick before catching myself and muttering, "You're ridiculous." The clock read 8:40 when my phone buzzed again. Another message. Don't be late. That was it. No name, no emojis, no warmth. But something about those 3 words made my pulse quicken in a way I couldn't quite explain. By 8:55, I was in my car. The streets were quieter than I expected. The city humming in that in-between state where it wasn't quite night, but no longer day. My mind kept running through possibilities. Maybe he wanted to show me something he was working on. Maybe there was a problem only I could help with. But if that were the case, why the tone? Why not just say it outright? When I pulled up to his place, the first thing I noticed was the lighting soft, warm, and spilling faintly from the windows. His apartment was in a renovated brick building, the kind that still carried echoes of its past life, with narrow hallways and doors that didn't quite close without a push. I stood there for a moment, keys in hand, staring at the dark green of his front door. I could still leave. I could text him, say something had come up, and be home in 10 minutes. But my fingers were already curling around the doorknob when the door opened. He was standing there, leaning against the frame as if he had been waiting for me. "Right on time," he said, his voice low, almost amused. There was no handshake, no hug, no casual greeting. Just his eyes steady, unreadable in the faintest curve of a smile that didn't quite reach them. Inside, the space was warm, but not cluttered. A record player hummed softly in the background, some old jazz tune, drifting through the air. There was no one else there, no signs of a group gathering, no half-filled glasses or coats on chairs. Just him. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. Closing the door behind me, "I wasn't sure either," I replied, trying to match his casual tone. Though my pulse was far from calm, he studied me for a moment, and I felt that same subtle tension I'd noticed before. Like we were standing on the edge of a conversation neither of us knew how to start. "I meant it," he said. "I have something to show you." "What is it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped further inside, gesturing for me to follow. And just like that, I realized 2 things at once. I had no idea what I was walking into. I wasn't sure I wanted to turn back.